Until I talked to Paul Cave, I didn't realise that 200,000 people a year climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I also didn't realise how difficult it was to get that project off the ground. It took 9 years. And it wouldn't have happened if Paul Cave hadn't have had a really nasty problem with the bureaucracy when he was running or developing a tile business. And he learnt through that how you go about the process. And I think a really big lesson from the talk with Paul Cave is that when you get an idea, whether it be through a big company or when you're starting your own business, it can often take a lot longer than you expect, and that length of time is extended if you have to deal with governments or unions or all sorts of other bodies. But if your idea is good, you can make a lot of money. Paul, I knew your father, the late Les Cave, and he became the CEO of one of our larger companies. Why didn't you go into the big corporate arena yourself? A good example?
For a good example.
Yes.
I think watching him, he was an incredible inspiration in my life. He was such a competitive guy, but also financially, once you're a chief executive, there's a lid on what you can earn, and you've got to play with that political system in public companies and corporate governance and those sorts of things. So I always really wanted to do my own thing.
Of course, in those days, the CEOs didn't get paid a lot either in the big companies.
No, not really. No.
So you started off and you started Amber Tiles. Is that after a few things? Is that right?
Yes, yes. Amber was the first business I started, and I ran it for about 25 years. Probably stayed about 5 years beyond my use-by date, but yes.
But you actually became one of the largest tile retailers in the country, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We had about 18 outlets, and we were manufacturing some product as well. So we were in paving bricks and ceramic tiles.
And then you sell it to the staff. What did you do that for?
Well, look, as I said, I think I stayed beyond my use-by date, and the business really needed to franchise, and I really was the person who stopped that happening, because people who I'd been effectively in partnership with didn't really want the rules to change into franchising, and I really was the showstopper. So it was, I in the end needed to move out, and the business has since franchised and done very well.
So you think there's, in terms of entrepreneurs, there's a time to leave?
Absolutely, and often entrepreneurs do need a kick upstairs. I know I've needed a nudge a few times, and I think that's really important. Because entrepreneurs are so passionate and so emotionally involved in businesses that they frequently can't see a lot of other aspects.
It's a mistake a lot of them make, isn't it?
It's a frequent mistake. Most entrepreneurs are not good operational people. They're much better with their sniffer. They're much better with the passion and the idea and the drive, and they need to be complemented invariably with other skills.
So how did you get the idea of people climbing the bridge as a tourist attraction and a business?
Robert, it's a long story, but as a 19-year-old, I met the man who was to become my father-in-law, and on the day the bridge opened, he as a 13-year-old, as a teenager, came in for the opening of the bridge and then rolled his blanket up and slept at Wynyard Railway Station on the 19th of March 1932. At 5 a.m. the next morning, he bought ticket number 1 for crossing the bridge by train. And that was amazing. So ultimately I inherited that rail ticket, and it stimulated me to collect the bridge's history, which I've now got some 6,000 pieces of in my personal collection, and that's really where originally the passion and interest in the bridge came from.
But you had to get permission to enable people to climb the bridge.
Yeah,
how did you, and New South Wales is a pretty tough place to do these things, how did you go about that?
Well, look, we put together a business plan, having climbed a group of people and watched their reaction, which was just quite amazing. I thought I've just got to share this with the world. And we needed to find a way to make it safe and prudent and sensible to do, and work in with the maintenance of the bridge and the traffic. So we put together a pretty comprehensive business plan. In fact, in the end, it took us 2.5 years to put the business plan together in a very thorough sort of way, and ultimately had that plan ready to present to the government.
But how long did it take from the day you start on that plan to the day you get the business going?
Yeah, 9 years and 10 months.
9 years?
Yes.
What on earth took 9 years?
Well, look, it was a gutsy call on the government to, for a private individual to want the bridge leased and licensed to them for a long time, which is what I was seeking. And really we were a world's first, so you know it's a valuable icon, and there's a lot of traffic on it, and there are unions and people on it, so convincing them, I think, that we could do it and it would be totally safe and that the maintenance could continue, you know, took a lot of doing, a lot of environmental issues, and a lot of people who wanted to have their thumbprint on the bridge.
Who are the hardest people to convince?
Well, look, State Rail was probably one of the most challenging, and one of their rules was you've got to thou shalt wear a fluorescent orange jacket when you're within 6 metres of rail track. Makes good sense.
Yes.
But we were putting people in a grey suit to blend them into the bridge, and we were putting them on a one metre lanyard so you couldn't get anywhere near the trains. But no, there are our rules, and it actually took 2 years and I think 20 or 30 meetings with State Rail until ultimately they came around.
Of course, the workers on the bridge didn't have harnesses in the old days, did they?
No.
So they mightn't have wanted you up there either.
Well, look, I think the workers probably, we were happy to want to show their bridge off to the world, but they were probably a little concerned that this is our space and what changes have they got to make. And I think in some ways we were somewhat threatening in that area, and we needed to work really hard to get them on side.
So how many people climb the bridge every day and every year, roughly?
We're climbing a couple of 100,000 people a year.
Gee.
So today 500 or 600 people are climbing. Yes.
It's a lot of people, isn't it?
It is a lot of people, yes.
So what do you learn about people when you put them in that situation? How many get halfway and stop, and what happens?
Well, we really prepare people well before they do the climb. They climb a simulator first. Of course, it is totally safe. We haven't had a serious injury of any type. We haven't had a heart attack, despite the fact we've climbed 2.5 million people over 11 years. So, you know, it's a thoroughly safe thing to do. But in terms of learning, I mean, some people have a discomfort with height.
Yes.
And I think it enables them to overcome that. And we're climbing now people who are wanting to push boundaries. I mean, someone will make a booking and they've had a heart bypass operation only a week ago. So you're seeing that sort of issue. You're seeing people, we had a marriage proposal on the bridge this morning. So you're seeing all sorts of things, but you really are seeing people dealing with a very personal journey and a personal experience.
Do you learn something about entrepreneurs or CEOs in this process?
Look,
Do you find weaknesses in them that you wouldn't have otherwise seen?
Well, I think you see other aspects of people, and people who are emotionally affected, and you will see people with tears streaming out of their eyes, and you think, where did that come from? Well, so many people have stories that relate to the bridge or its construction, or there's some sort of personal emotional button that it pushes for them, and so it takes people into another part of their lives that many don't frequently ever get into.
Do companies use this as executive training?
Yeah, some of them do, and certainly they're very interested in the systems of the way this works. So we get a lot of people looking at the way we prepare and how thorough the entire system is, and the feedback we get, because I'm a quality control freak. And yes, they're fascinated by those concepts and the way this works.
Do you think a lot of our businesses don't have the requirement to be so exact as is required when there's a bridge climb?
Well, probably one of the things that sticks out to me, I mean, although there's a chief executive of this business and I'm the chairman, as it were,
Sure.
Chairman in inverted commas, but you know, I personally look after customer complaints and that's all I have to do. If I do that, you know, the rest of the business...
So you look after the customer complaints?
Yeah.
And what's the main one?
Well, look, you get a range of things. We get many, many more compliments, but we're not looking for the compliments. We're really looking for the customer that might say, well, look, I didn't pass your breath test this morning and maybe I wasn't handled as I thought I should have been. Now, we want to know those things. So we would make a change to that business. The chief executive makes a change to that business probably once every fortnight and has done for 11 years as a result of customer feedback, of a comment that a customer has made. And that's gold to us. So you want to encourage that genuinely to happen.
So who owns your business?
Well, we have the bridge leased for a 20-year period.
Okay.
So
you're about halfway.
Yes. We've got 5 shareholders, and between us, you know, it's a private business.
And these are the original shareholders?
Yes, in fact 6 of us.
Yes.
In fact, the 6 who started are still shareholders today.
Brett Blundy was one of them.
Brett Blundy
From Sanity, and
Jack Cowan, they're the two major shareholders. And we've got three other small shareholders.
And they've stayed with you the whole time?
They have, yeah.
And do you make lots of money?
It's been a profitable business, it has. It was a long lead into this and took a lot more time and money in an investment sense, but the business was an incredible financial and business success, and we've worked hard at it, from day one.
Paul, what's your advice to somebody who's has an idea and then runs into roadblocks, as you obviously must have run into for it to be a 9-year incubation? What's your advice to them?
Robert, I previously had a lesson in my life where I stuffed up with a real estate site with Amber that I was wanting to buy an adjoining site, and I mucked it up with the town planning guy and didn't with that bureaucrat kiss his butt, as I should have done at the time. And it was a great lesson to have, whilst I fundamentally were able, by taking the council to court to land and environment to win that court case. I won the battle, but I sure as hell lost the war.
Yes.
And it took a couple of years and a lot of money. Now, it was a good lesson to have before making Bridge Climb happen, because the bridge is owned by the people and the government, and there are so many areas of sensitivity we had to work with bureaucracy and politics. And it was great to have had that lesson, to understand the simplistic thing that of one needing to find solutions always to what may threaten or make a government or a bureaucrat discomforted.
But if you had have known back in '89 that it was going to take you 9 years, would you have done it?
No, I wouldn't have. And but I really think that sometimes it's good not to know. I was guesstimating I could do this in 2 years. For a couple of $1 million, it cost several more millions of dollars, and 10 years in effect. So that was a tedious process, but there was gold at the end of the rainbow.
How did you live at that time?
It was a really, really tough time. It was very tough, but fortunately, I'm pretty obsessive and pretty anal and focused, and it required a lot of tenacity. But we got there. Thank goodness.
Paul, have you tried to do this anywhere else in the world?
Well, we'd love to be able to do that. I set up a separate company, Bridge Climb International. We've been working on a number of other icons, and one of them that I can talk about is the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. And we've had the Mayor of New York work with us and is positive about this. Yes. We had done a lot of work on that bridge over a couple of years with a team of people who've been working with me. And we had heads of agreement underway, and then I was on my way flying across there, in fact, when an aeroplane flew into a building in New York, and my team were waiting for me in the US.
9/11?
Yeah, 9/11. So,
and it stopped it?
It stopped it.
Really?
So, and the cost of terrorism insurance, which is about $5 billion to replace that bridge, is some tens of millions of dollars per annum. So, some interesting things we've got to deal with.
Why did it stop it longer term? What caused? I understand why it might stop for 2 or 3 years, but why is it blocking it now?
Well, that country and New York particularly, I think there's a lot of jumping at shadows, understandably, for terrorism. Yes. So we've just got to work with that. Ultimately, I think there'll be a solution. Ultimately, and we're working still and striving to make that happen.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.